Welcome, crypto fam, to the #1 daily Bitcoin pod. In today's show, I'll be breaking down the latest Bitcoin technical analysis, as well as all the breaking news as a result of the recent Nashville event, which just completed yesterday with the Trump speech. We'll also be discussing the state of Michigan unveiling nearly $6.6 million investment into ARK21 shares, Bitcoin ETF, as well as Senator Lummis proposes U.S. government purchase of 5% of the total Bitcoin supply, as well as MicroStrategy's Michael Saylor says Bitcoin will hit 13 million per coin in his base case scenario. Wait till you hear the bullish scenario. I'll be breaking down his timeline. We'll also be discussing Bitcoin key to dollar stability. Kennedy Jr. urges the U.S. to hold 4 million BTC reserve. Also be giving you all the highlights from RFK Jr.'s speech, which is definitely the best speech at the conference as far as his promises on Bitcoin. We'll also be discussing how high can the Bitcoin price soar following Trump's bullish Bitcoin speech. I'll be sharing some price targets with you, as well as all the highlights from Trump speaking at the conference, as well as a lot of speculation as well. We'll be speaking about all this, plus so much more in today's show. And if you're new to the channel, very important to smash the likes. Go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell icon to turn on all notifications to receive daily premium crypto news alerts every single day, just like this. Church is in session. I'm going to be preaching the holy gospel of Satoshi. Happy Sunday fun day. It's July 28th, 2024. I'm your host, JV, and this is pod episode number 1714. That's right, 1714. But anyways, family, let's kick it off with today's market watch. We are maintaining above 68,000, which is awesome. We did tap 69,000 yesterday off the back of the Trump speech. You can see markets correcting, but still maintaining. We have Ether barely in the green, XRP barely in the green, while BTC, BNB, and Cardano are correcting and in the red, but very modestly. And checking out coinmarketcap.com, Bitcoin dominance at 55.5%. Ether dominance is at 16.3%. The other day I seen it hit a low of roughly 16%. So it's ironic how since the launch of the Ethereum spot ETS, which I believe was on the 23rd last week, ETH dominance has been declining, and even the price action overall, which is pretty wild. But anyways, the Bitcoin market cap today is sitting at $1.3 trillion. And let's see where the crypto market cap is at. Totally, it's 2.42 trillion crypto overall market cap. And checking out the top 100 crypto gainers of the past 24 hours, Bitcoin Cash Trash, ironically leading the pack, up 5.7% with an $8 billion market cap. We got Jupiter up 4%, trading at $1.13, followed by ENS up 3%, trading just about $27. Below that, we got Solana, AKT, and Brett. Now, which alt, if any, are you bullish on for the bull? Holla. And checking out the crypto bubbles so we get a visual perspective on the daily. Safe to say 90% of the market correcting and in the red. Oh, it just updated. Now safe to say 80% of the market correcting and in the red. And zooming out on the monthly, I would speculate half the market in the green, half the market in the red. Go figure. And checking out the Crypto Greed and Fear Index, 71 greed for today. Yesterday, 72. And last week, a 74. So there you have it, yo. Only a few days left, 3 days to be exact, in the month before we get a monthly close. Do you think we're going to have a strong green bullish candle for the month of July? Holla at your boy. And where do you think the price is likely trending next since the Bitcoin conference? And now we know all the announcements, which I'm going to be covering in detail here in today's podcast. But anyways, next we're going to dive into today's Bitcoin technical analysis. Check out some of the live charts where the price action will likely take us next, as we're still hovering above 68 G's, baby, and now back in the green. How do you like that, bears? But yeah, this headline reads, feels surreal. Bitcoin sticks to 68,000 as the market ignores 200,000 BTC US election pledge, obviously referring to the one and only Trumpster. Here you're looking at the 1 hour chart. Bitcoin headed for the crunch weekly close, July 28th, after market shook off U.S. presidential candidates' crypto pledges. Trading views showed the Bitcoin price stabilizing after flash volatility around the 2024 BTC conference. Happy 420, by the way, fam. Anticipation of the snap price surge built for an advance of the event two presidential candidates. We have Trump and RFK. Both stated plans to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve of at least 200,000 biddies. However, the impact was muted. There's a 65% chance of a U.S. strategic reserve for Bitcoin, and you will still buy it for under 70,000. That's according to Charles Edwards of Capriole Investments, referring to Trump's election odds. And then we had Dan Crypto Trade suggest the overall lack of market response could be a question of time. Quoting him here, think people are a bit surprised and confused by this timeline. Feels surreal when what we just saw and heard. We basically got what we wanted. This was partially priced in, but we saw a big flush of longs before Trump made the statement. And I got to give respect where respect and kudos is due. Max Kaiser was the first one to hint at Trump making an announcement at the Bitcoin event, and he did it, I think, back on the 15th, roughly half a month ago. And I was the very first podcaster to cover it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know of another podcaster that shared that story the same day that Max shared that statement and prediction. And I have been relentlessly covering the story every day since the conference. I don't know any other podcaster has been doing the same. So kudos to Max and kudos to JV. Just saying. But anyways, quoting Dan Crypto Trades, even if they won't buy any new coins, just holding their seized coins will rule out a 15 billion supply overhang. This is more than the German government as well as Mt. Gox combined. Now, with the conference buzz dying down, Bitcoin traders thus turn their attention to the upcoming weekly and monthly close right around the corner here. The previous candle finish came in at nearly 68.2, leaving uncertainty over whether the week would ultimately see losses. And any RSI data, according to Mega Whale, shared hope for continued hopeful continuation here, quoting him here. Bitcoin weekly RSI had broken upward. This is a great sign. However, to validate the breakout, the RSI will need to sustain the diagonal down trending resistance until the weekly close is above on July 27th. Now, Keith Allen of Material Indicators shared the following. That's another rejection from 69. The trend precognition indicates we won't be seeing Bitcoin bull succeed at the RS flip tomorrow. Of course, there's a tentative signal and a push to 69.4 will invalidate. So all eyes on $69,400. And data from CoinGlass showed Bitcoin up 7.8% thus far in July, canceling out the losses seen in June. Not too shabby. And checking out some of the live chartage action. Here you're looking at the 1 month chart brought to you by TradingView via Coinbase. Let me switch up the scene so you can see it so fresh and so clean. There you go. So we're sitting still above 68 Gs. We do have a target on the monthly. You can see all the green consecutive candles. We did have 7 consecutive green closes for the month. And then we had some corrective. We had a pretty substantial red corrective a few months ago. And I think we're going to close green for this month. Clearly, we're well above where we need to be. And zooming in a little bit, let's check out the weekly, which is the most bullish chart in Bitcoin. It's going to have the most bullish target. You can see we have a massive bullish flag. We had 2 green massive consecutive candles for the past couple of weeks, and we do have a massive target sitting at 126,000, which is a cup and handle. Let me know when you feel we'll likely smash that 126G target. Holla at your boy. And we'll zoom in a little bit more here. We'll check out the 1-day chart popping up right here, and you can see we've had a few green consecutives, which is good after a little corrective red candles, and hopefully we get another strong green weekly candle close here later tonight. And again, 3 days we're going to get a monthly candle close, and I think it's going to be in the green as well. Let me know your thoughts. And checking out the 4-hour chart, you can see we do have a rising wedge formation looking pretty bullish. Look at that. And we're green past 4 hours, back in the green, which is cool. And let's just zoom in a little bit more and check out the 1 hour real briefly to get a more zoomed in perspective. And this is the 1 hour chart. We do have some targets sitting under the current price action, though, you got to be aware of. One of them is sitting at 63.8. And then we have one very bearish all the way down to 53,200. But anyways, Joe, next story of the day. Here's the latest breaking story of the state of Michigan, unveiling nearly 6.6 million investment into ARK21 shares. Bitcoin ETF. That's right. New documents reveal the state of Michigan holds millions of dollars worth of investments into ARK21 Bitcoin ETF, according to the new 13F filing with the U.S. SEC. State of Michigan Retirement System has purchased 110,000 shares of ARK21 shares, worth nearly 6.6 million. Here's what senior ETF analyst Balchuna shared about it. Just checked, and yes, looks like Michigan's pension bought up some ARC B, although we have it at 7.4 million, which is a small percentage-wise for them, but it's a start. They are now the third pension to report owning a Bitcoin ETF. Let's go pension funds for the biddy. The ARC 21 shares Bitcoin ETF is currently trading at $68, a 5.3% increase over the past 24 hours, and according to the ETF focused data analytics platform, VetaFi, ARC B currently has 3.2 billion in total assets, the fourth largest Bitcoin ETF on the market. The state of Michigan retirement system is a statewide public pension plan for Michigan state employees, including public school workers. And based on the most recent 13F filing, the state of Michigan retirement system oversees $19.4 billion in assets. That's a lot of money. Hopefully it all starts flowing towards the biddy. Now, in March, SEC docs unveiled the state of Wisconsin Investment Board is holding $163 million worth of combined shares of BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, as well as Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust. So that's iBit and GBTC. So as the game theory continues, not just with nation state adoption, but also pension funds, family. Bring it. So there you have it. Headline reads, Senator Lummis proposes U.S. government purchase of 5% of the total BTC supply. That's right. U.S. Senator Lummis has introduced a strategic Bitcoin reserve bill proposing the U.S. government buy 5% of the world's Bitcoin supply, hold it for at least 20 years. Talk about a 20-year HODL strategy. Let's go. It can be used for one purpose, to reduce our debt, said Lummis, declaring during her keynote speech at the Bitcoin 2024 conference just yesterday in Nashville, Tennessee. Lummis explained that if passed, the plan will be implemented over 5 years. The U.S. government acquiring 1 million biddies, roughly 5% of the total supply of the 21 million BTC. That's right, 1%. 1 million is 5%. With Bitcoin price at 68,000 at this time, purchasing 1 million of the Bitcoin would cost roughly 68 billion. According to CoinMarketCap data, quoting her here, the Bitcoin reserve that we are going to create will start with 210,000 Bitcoin that President Trump just mentioned and pull it into a reserve stored in geopolitically diverse vaults. And that's only the beginning. We have the money now, but we will no longer be holding it in US dollars and assets that are designed to debase at least 2% per year. We'll be holding it in an asset that will grow in value. Amen to the biddy. Now, Lummis, who is well regarded in the crypto industry for her pro-crypto stance, received a positive reaction from the Bitcoin 2024 attendees as she yelled, "This is the solution. This is the answer. This is our Louisiana purchase moment. Thank you, Bitcoin." Her speech came immediately after the highly anticipated keynote from U.S. President and current Republican Party candidate, Mr. Trump. Trump announced his intent to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world if elected in November, and it comes only days after Lummis released a report arguing against President Biden's administration's proposed 30% excise tax on the energy consumed by the Bitcoin miners. Boo! And on July 23rd, Lummis released a report titled Powering Down Progress, Why a Bitcoin Mining Tax Hurts America. Good for her. Highlighting the benefit of the critical mining infrastructure to the U.S. energy grid. And Trump had very positive things to say about mining Bitcoin in America as well. And towards the end of the stream, we're going to be discussing everything Trump related, his promises shared during the speech. We'll be dissecting it. And in a little bit, we'll be dissecting RFK Jr. as well as Michael Saylor's speech. So that's what we have to look forward to. But now let's discuss the latest from the Giga Chat, Michael Saylor, base case, 13 million. Wait till you hear the bull scenario here, family. Headline reads, MicroStrategy's Michael Saylor says Bitcoin will hit 13 million in the base case scenario. Here's the timey-limey. MicroStrategy founder and executive chair, Saylor, thinks Bitcoin will skyrocket, over 19,000%. in 2 decades. Speaking at the Bitcoin 2024 conference in Nashville, Saylor unveils his long-term predictions for the biddy, stretching out to the year 2045. So what is that? 21 years from now. 21 being a divine number. There's only 21 million Bitcoin ever created. Also, 11 plus 10 is 21. Now, in the base scenario, the Bitcoin firebrand sees Bitcoin's annual rate of return decreasing over time until Bitcoin hits 13 million with a market cap of 280 trillion. Quoting him here. Here's my macro Bitcoin forecast. It's 21 years. It goes out to the year 2045. What do I think will happen? Well, I've got a bear case and a bull case. But what I think will happen is that 55% ARR goes, and again, ARR means annual rate of return. He says, again, but what I think will happen is that 55% ARR goes to 50%, 45%, 40%, 35%, 30, 25, 20% is between 50%, 20%. It'll gradually decelerate till it's growing about twice as fast as the S&P index. At that rate, Bitcoin is 13 million a coin. In the year 2045, again, base case, it would be a 3 million bear case. Not too shabby. And it could be a 49 million bull case. Send it. But what is Bitcoin? 7% of the world's assets then. And here's the chart Michael Saylor presented. You can see right here, Bitcoin 21-year price forecast shows you today's price, 65 G's, the percentage of the assets, the market cap, and the annual return rate as we just broke down for you. You can see the bear, the base, the bull. So do you think the bull will come true at 49 million? Or do you think it'll be a base bear somewhere in between? Let me know in that chat. Now, MicroStrategy, we know, is the largest corporate hodler of the BTC in the world with a trove of 226,000 BTC worth 15.3 billion. Crypto trader Luke Martin says Saylor would be the wealthiest man on the planet. A Bitcoin soars to 13 million per coin in 2045. So if his base case is accurate, he becomes wealthiest man on the planet. Bada boom, bada bing. Minus maybe Satoshi or Max Kaiser, but just saying. If you factor in the percentage of the ownership of MicroStrategy and personal coins, his Bitcoin position would be 573 billion, making him the richest person on earth if his prediction plays out. Really puts the Bitcoin nation-state game theory into perspective. One guy was able to accumulate a Bitcoin position that could rival the largest central bank gold reserve in a decade or two. One guy live tweeting his buy nonstop for 4 years. That's powerful words right there. Also keep in mind that Michael Saylor didn't adopt Bitcoin, I think, until 2020. First publicly traded company to put the BTC on the balance sheet. He came late to the party. Bitcoin Genesis block was back on January 3rd of 2009. January 3rd, 2009. He came 11 years late. Still may become the wealthiest man on the planet thanks to the BTC. So no matter when you get started, it's how much action you take and how much faith you devote to the BTC. Let me know your thoughts on some of those projections, baby. All right, now for the most exciting part of the show, the RFK Jr. speech breakdown, followed by the Trump speech breakdown. We'll compare the two, and you tell me who has a better promise for the BTC and who you're going to be voting for this election year, November 5th, around the corner. And then we'll dive into our live Q&A. And yeah, we're live and in the flesh right now. Just remember, family, this is live and interactive. So be sure to comment. So yeah, so RFK Jr. Basically urges the U.S. to hold 4 million in a Bitcoin reserve. And before I even read you the story, let's just quote him verbatim from the speech. So here you go. I actually made this tweet a couple of days ago after he gave the speech. It was July 26th. Got 164 hearts, 41 reposts. So I'm going to assume you guys like it. So here you go. RFK Jr. pledges 4 executive orders related to Bitcoin on day 1 as the president. Here's his promise. Number 1, I will sign an executive order directing the U.S. Treasury to purchase 550 Bitcoin daily until the U.S. has built a reserve of at least 4 million Bitcoin. Let's go. That's pretty amazing right there. And number 2, I will sign an executive order directing the Department of Justice and the U.S. Marshals to transfer the 200,000 Bitcoin held by the U.S. government to the U.S. Treasury, where it will be held as a strategic asset. Let's go. And that's the Bitcoin that was ultimately seized, I guess, from Mt. Gox. And number 3, this is a big one. I will sign an executive order directing the IRS to issue public guidelines that all transactions between Bitcoin and the US dollar are unreportable transactions and by extension, non-taxable. Wow, that's a major one right there. That had me all lit up when I heard him say that. And it gets better. Number 4, I will also sign an executive order directing the IRS to treat Bitcoin as an eligible asset for a 1031 exchange into real property. So we got all these tax advantages. We got all the advantages of Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin as a strategic asset, converting all the Bitcoin they're currently holding into the treasury. And the big one, 550 Bitcoin daily. Let's go. 4 million Bitcoin on a reserve. Exactly what every Bitcoiner wanted to hear. He also promised to free Ross Ulbricht and Edward Snowden. So again, in my humble opinion, that was the most profound speech from any of the politicians, at least on the promises. And I genuinely believe what he says. And I'll reiterate what Max shared earlier, that RFK Jr. was speaking to the Bitcoin maxis, aka the Bitcoin purists, whereas Trump was just speaking to crypto in general. And we do speak different languages a little bit there. But anyways, here's a little deeper from this story. Bitcoin has proven to be a significant part of the upcoming U.S. presidential election, garnering interest amongst major political figures. As the election approaches, Republican presidential candidate RFK Jr. called the nation to acquire millions of BTC as a strategic reserve asset. Now, I'm going to correct that. I don't think he's a Republican candidate. I think he's independent. He was originally running as a Democrat. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then he dropped out of the Democratic Party and ran independent. So I don't know why they reported it as a Republican, but I digress. In a bold statement at the Bitcoin 2024 conference, July 26, Kennedy reiterated his plans to make Bitcoin a strategic reserve, as I just shared with you, should he emerge as the new president for the nation. Kennedy highlighted how incorporating the digital asset into the country's financial system may strengthen the stability and resiliency of the U.S. dollar. Wow. And he's also even said in different speeches that he'd be willing to back the dollar with Bitcoin, which I've never heard any of the other politicians ever say. In addressing the attendees at the conference, the presidential candidate began by revealing his intention of issuing pro-Bitcoin executive order on day one of his victory. The order will direct the Department of Justice and the U.S. Marshals to transfer 200,000 biddies currently held by the U.S. government to the country's treasury, where it would be held as strategic reserve asset. Additionally, Kennedy stated he'd issue another order to mandate the treasury to acquire 550 Bitcoin daily until the U.S. established a reserve of at least 4 million BTC. And they can get it because the United States just prints money out of thin air. All you're doing is trading your fiat monopoly money for the hardest asset in human history. So they could actually accomplish that, family, if they wanted to. Kennedy intends to match the U.S. Bitcoin holdings with its gold reserve, which currently boasts about 19% of the world's gold reserve. And acknowledging the potential for the biddy, Kennedy envisions Bitcoin as an eligible asset of exchange into real properties. Thus, he aspires to pass an executive order to the IRS to treat the asset as such once he takes over the presidential seat. And after being part of the Bitcoin community over time, the crypto advocate highlighted the most significant aspect of the community is the unity amongst supporters, which reminds him of how America is supposed to be. Because of this, he believes that Bitcoin is the tech for freedom, optimism, independence, democracy, and transparency. Bitcoin is the currency of hope. It is the perfect currency. Well said there. Now, while Kennedy advocates Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset that could fortify the U.S. dollar, he noted, and that the action would make the country a leader in the cyberspace, symbolizing a new era of innovation. Furthermore, he cited the recent outspoken endorsement of Bitcoin by rival President Trump, disclosing that during his speech at the conference, Trump might propose a plan to authorize the U.S. government to purchase 1 million Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset, which is advantageous to the country. But unfortunately, Trump didn't make that announcement. Now, although Kennedy endorsed the move, he hopes that Trump's dedication towards digital currency spans beyond political expediency. The most cynical reason could be the excite 60 million Bitcoin holders with policies that will increase the price. As a result, he stressed the need for proper understanding of the biddy and the potential to protect the U.S. financial system and individuals against cyber dangers. So there you have it, yo. That's the executive order. You'll notice I also posted this up on X. You guys can check it out and hear the speech, from his own mouth. And you could also probably find it on YouTube. I think Bitcoin Magazine ultimately streamed the entire event. So you should be able to catch any of the speakers that you missed and really want to watch in full detail over there. So shout out to Bitcoin Magazine. And now for our feature story of the day. Here are the highlights from the Trump 2024 Bitcoin Nashville conference. We'll be discussing how high can the Bitcoin price realistically go after Trump's bullish Bitcoin speech, and also be sharing with you verbatim what the highlights were as far as his promises to the Bitcoiners. So let's start with the tweet that I created. You can also see all these headlines. Also, Trump pledges to fire SEC Chair Gary Gensler on day one, which got it almost sounded like a standing ovation, and he had to repeat himself twice because it got so many cheers. But nonetheless, Crypto Rover says if Trump gets reelected, that we're going to surpass 813,000 per coin. We'll dive into that here in a moment. But I want to start right here with a tweet that I made yesterday after the speech, along with Trump here. Got 79 hearts and 34 reposts. So thank you, family. So yeah, Donald Trump 2024 Bitcoin conference speech recap. Here are the highlights. On day one, I will fire Gary Gensler and appoint a new SEC chairman, and the crowd goes wild. And he repeats it, and the crowd goes wild again. So I think it's safe to say every Bitcoiner wants Gary to hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Number two, create a U.S. government strategic national Bitcoin stockpile if elected. Now, he used an interesting choice of word. He used stockpile versus strategic reserve. Is it safe in assuming it's one and the same, or is there a difference there? Can someone chime in and let me know in the chat? Because I did find that odd. He said stockpile, but I'm going to assume he meant strategic reserve asset. Next, he said the U.S. government will keep 100% of the Bitcoin it owns, which is a beautiful thing because, as you know, the U.S. government is one of the largest holders of Bitcoin with over 200,000, which was seized from Mt. Gox. And maybe he's insinuating that all the future Bitcoin they take or seize from criminals, they will keep as well. I mean, why wouldn't you? Now, next, Bitcoin is going to the moon. We all know that one, right? Never sell your Bitcoin. He made a good point to express that. He didn't say the word hodl, but he says, you know what, us Bitcoiners, you never sell your Bitcoin. So shout out to the hodl gang. Next, he said Bitcoin will one day probably surpass the market cap of gold. And like I said, if that happens, very easy, close to $1 million Bitcoin or above. Market cap of gold right now, I'm assuming, is in the ballpark of 16 trillion. Bitcoin market cap is only 1, maybe 0.3 trillion. So it gives us a lot of room for growth. He also says, I reaffirm my pledge to commute Ross Ulbricht's sentence, ultimately insinuating he will free Ross Ulbricht, who is serving a multiple life sentence for being an early Bitcoin adopter, ultimately, in my opinion. And I think that's something we all want as Bitcoiners. I'd love for Ross, you know what would be pretty beautiful? Trump gets reelected. He pardons Ross Ulbricht. And then at the next conference next year, Ross is the keynote speaker. Wow. How crazy would that be, family? Now, next, there will never be a CBDC while I am president of the United States of America. He has shared that previously when he started being pro-Bitcoin and crypto. Ironically, 10 days later, there was an assassination attempt on his life, but he doubled down on that. He says he is against central bank digital currencies, and he will not allow that in the United States. That's music to my ears because we all know what CBDs represent. Slavery to mankind. It's virtually the way of the central bank to enslave you through money that they can program and set an expiration date on, which we want no part of. Bitcoin is the antidote to the CBDC. Now, also, Bitcoin and crypto will skyrocket like never before if elected president. Well, we know Bitcoin will skyrocket like never before, regardless if he is elected president, because that's just what Bitcoin does. And Bitcoin doesn't need Trump. Bitcoin don't need RFK. Bitcoin don't need nobody. Regardless who's in there, even if Sleepy Joe somehow criminally won the re-election, and even though he may not even still be living, and somehow they rigged the system again, Bitcoin is still going to do its thing. You can't stop it. It's a freight train heading to the moon. It's flying. It got wings, baby. But anyways, I digress. Bitcoin is not threatening the dollar. I like this one. The current U.S. government is threatening the dollar. It's because previously, years ago, when Trump used to FUD Bitcoin, he blamed Bitcoin being ultimately that it undermined the value of the dollar. That came from his own mouth a few years ago. So now that he has learned more about Bitcoin, he is willing to admit that it's not Bitcoin that's threatening the dollar. It's the U.S. government threatening the dollar, which is 100% accurate. It's the money printing of the Fed. The more you print, the more the dollar is doomed. So common sense. So respect. The United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world. Very powerful statement right there. Max disagrees. He says that is impossible to do. And I'll read you the Max quote here in a bit. He also said Bitcoin stands for freedom, sovereignty, and independence from government coercion and control. Facts. Very powerful right there. And he also says, I pledge to the Bitcoin community that the day I take oath of office, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris anti-crypto crusade will be over. And we all know how much they hate and despise Bitcoin because their puppeteers hate and despise Bitcoin because it is the Achilles heel. Ultimately, Bitcoin is the Achilles heel to the central banking cartels in which they stand for and represent. But there you have it. That's the speech from Trump. Now I want to read you some things. Max Keiser responded to my quote of Trump earlier today that I posted, and Max reposted it with the quote, "This is mathematically impossible since Bitcoin is absolutely decentralized, but love Trump jumping into the game theory fray and hopefully getting the U.S. competing in the global hash war I identified in 2019 as the most likely outcome. The other guy's a plagiarist," referring to the guy who wrote that book. I forget the guy's name he's referring to, but yeah, that's Max's feedback on that. Now let's break down some of the headlines, but first here's the tweet from Crypto Rover. Donald Trump said Bitcoin will one day probably surpass the market cap of gold. If this would happen, Bitcoin would be valued at $813,000 per coin. And my question for you guys, by what year, because we all know it's inevitable, by what year will Bitcoin's market cap likely surpass the 16 trillion market cap of gold? Holla at your boy. And also, again, Trump pledges to fire SEC chairman day one if reelected, which, again, got the most claps that I heard during that speech, and you guys watched it with me. But now let's speculate a little more, eh? One of the boldest and most bullish outlooks for Bitcoin after Trump's speech comes from independent market analyst Dan Derovar. The chartist, who goes by the name or moniker Crypto Rover, expects the price to surpass 800,000 if Trump is elected once again in November, particularly since Trump stated that Bitcoin may overtake gold's market cap in the future. And I just read you his quote. He could see Bitcoin hitting 813,000 if the Bitcoin market cap were to surpass gold at 16 trillion. Also, as I shared earlier, Republican Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming adds to the bullish outlook. She presented the legislative proposal to establish an official U.S. Federal Reserve of 1 million BTC over the next 5 years, which is almost 5% of the circulating Bitcoin supply, actually even more, 5% of the total 21 million supply. An excerpt from her address: Bitcoin will be held for a minimum of 20 years, the 20-year HODL strategy, and then can be used for one purpose: reduce our debt. Let's see if the Fed has an intention to really reduce the debt or not, hey? The U.S. government already holds 210,000 biddies worth over $14 billion. Trump promised to allocate those holdings to the U.S. Treasury, adding that his government, if elected, will never, ever dump them. Never, because it's going up forever, Laura. But there you have it, yo. That's the latest with the updates. Now you've heard the most important things that went down from the event, from Michael Saylor, Cynthia Lummis, Max Keiser, and RFK Jr. So let me know your thoughts and feedback. And who do you think had the best speech? And do you think they'll stick to their promises? Let me know, and I'll read your comments out loud.